understand about the dynamics, which is the third chapter of the IGCSE and GCE O levels physics. So the definition of dynamics is that the study of motion of object with reference of force. Does you remember that when we were understanding about the kinematics, we have already understand that we will understand about the study of motion of object without the reference of force? But in the dynamics, we are required to have the reference of force, that what is the reason why the object is trying to move. There must be the reference of force. What is the force? At the first, we are required to understand the force. An agent to do work, an agent which produce or tends to produce motion in an object. An agent to consume amount of energy. Okay, so there are three laws of motion. So there are Newton's law of motion. The first law of motion is called law of inertia. Newton's second law of motion is called law of acceleration. And Newton's third law of motion is called law of reaction. Trying to understand the first law of motion first, the body at rest will remain at rest and the body in motion will remain in motion unless an external force is applied. What does it mean? For suppose I have taken a book. Now I have keep the book on the table. Then the book on the table is at the rest. Until and unless I just have exerted any pressure, any force on the book to trying it to move, that it will be moving. Otherwise, it will not move and will remain at rest. The state of rest or uniform motion is called inertia, or a tendency or ability to resist any change in its state of rest or uniform motion. The continuity of the state of rest or uniform motion is called inertia. What are the examples of first law of motion? The motion of earth sinking in water to move or stop a heavy vehicle. Newton's third law of motion. The statement for Newton's law of motion, what was the third law? The law of reaction. Action and reaction. It is simple to understand. For every action, there is an equal but opposite reaction. What does it mean? For suppose I have taken a book and keep on the table. Now this is now the same example. Now the book is obviously there must be a force exerting the pressure on the table. This is the action. What must be the reaction? That there must be a force from the table exerting on the book. That's why it is stable. So for every action there is an equal reaction but it is in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, if I have taken a book on the table, whatever the force applied by the book on the table is equal to the force applied on the book by the table. These are both opposite. This reaction is self-adjusting. There are two types of reaction, friction and tension. The self-adjusting reacting force offered by surface when it comes in contact with object is called friction. And there are friction of three types: static, dynamic and limiting friction. What is static friction? When friction is applied on body and it remains at a static position or rest. When friction applies on body and it remains in motion is called dynamic friction. What is limiting friction? The maximum amount of friction a surface can apply. What are the causes of friction? Okay, now try to understand this. Sliding friction. Friction offered by surface when an object slides over it. For example, dragging on road, sliding down a hill. Rolling friction. Friction offered by surface when an object rolls over it. Motion of tires, motion of ball bearing, motion of fan. Now can you read the last sentence, which is in the bold? Note that rolling friction is always less than sliding friction. It means the rolling friction is less than sliding friction, such as took an example. Do you think so that the friction of sliding down a hill is less than the friction of motion of fan? No, that is why we are required to say rolling friction is less than sliding friction. How to reduce friction? To make surface lubricate or oily, meanwhile using of oil. Such as examples are use of engine oil in vehicles, using cooking oil in frying any meal, using ball bearing to convert sliding friction into rolling friction. Meanwhile, using ball bearings in tire and using ball bearings in electrical appliances such as motor, fans, etc. How to increase the friction? By making surface rough, such as putting sand on railway track in rainy season, using sand paper in smoothing the surface. By converting rolling friction into sliding friction, applying brake to stop moving a vehicle. What is the tension? It is does not mean by anxiety or depression like in the word of biology. No, it is physics. So the word tension in physics means something different, such as the self-adjusting reacting force offered by strain against weight of an object. The definition can come in paper too. Examples of tension are hanging of fan, towing of vehicle, hanging of frame. Such as I have hang a wall clock. Now a nail has now the nail has covered overall weight of the wall clock. This is called the tension. Means the hanging of the frame or hanging of the wall clock. Newton's second law of motion. What does it mean? Law of acceleration. Okay, so statement. When an unbalanced force is applied, there will be an acceleration. Amount of acceleration is directly proportional to amount of force and inversely proportional to mass of object. Meanwhile, if the amount of force increases, the amount of acceleration increases. If the amount of force decreases, the amount of acceleration will obviously decrease. But if amount of mass of object increases, amount of acceleration must be decreased, and vice versa. 1 Newton. We all know that in the simple words what I'm trying to say is that the SI unit of force is Newton. What is SI unit? We have discussed this in our first live streaming session of kinematics. 1 Newton is the force acting on an object of mass 1 kg to produce an acceleration of 1 meter per second square in the direction of force. That is why the formula for force is equals to mass multiplied by acceleration. F is equals to ma. Thinking distance. The definition for thinking distance is the distance covered by vehicle between driver response to hazard barrier to application of brake. It depends upon the driver's reaction time. Factors affecting thinking distance: the speed of vehicle, driver's sense. What is the braking distance? The definition for braking distance is the distance covered by vehicle between application of brakes and stopping of vehicle. Factors affecting braking distance: the speed of vehicle, friction of the surface. Okay, what is the relationship between thinking distance and braking distance? Now try to understand this. Stopping distance is equal to thinking plus braking distance. Alright? Means if a driver wants to stop it, it means for stopping, he will think to stop and he will apply the brakes to stop. If you will add the thinking distance plus braking distance, you will be getting the answer of stopping distance. If stopping distance is greater than sum of thinking distance and braking distance, vehicle will strike the barrier. If stopping distance is less than sum of thinking and braking distance, vehicle will stop before barrier. Here is what freefall motion or motion under gravity. The motion of object in air due to gravity of earth is called freefall motion. We'll understand it about more, such as the gravitational field strength. The acceleration produced in an object due to gravity is called gravitational field strength or gravitational acceleration, where acceleration is equals to gravitational field strength. G is the symbol for gravity or the gravitational field strength. The value of G on the surface of Earth is 10 Newton per kilogram or simple 10 meter per second square. What is a free fall motion or motion under the gravity? So basically, we are required to just understand that weight, the force by which Earth attracts everybody towards its center. Weight is equals to mg, where v is equals to weight, m is equals to mass, and g is equals to gravitational field strength. As weight is a force, its SI unit is Newton. I hope so that if you are feeling any confusion, so just you have. I hope so that you have just visited my video mass, weight, and density, where I have briefly, in detail, have been described about the weight. Free fall motion, motion under gravity, terminal velocity. Okay, the constant of uniform velocity of an object in freefall motion due to drag force, friction force of air. Factors affecting drag force, such as weight of falling object and surface area in contact of falling object. The motion of falling bodies. If you drop an object, it will fall towards the ground. Before you release it, the object will be stationary or at a rest. So to fall to the ground, it must be accelerate. Newton's first law of motion tells us that for an object to accelerate, there must be a resultant force acting on the object. This force is provided by gravity. The force due to gravity acting on an object is called weight. Terminal velocity is the constant speed a falling object reaches when the drag force is equal to the weight, so the resultant force is zero. The size of the drag force also depends upon the surface area of the object and the fluid, such as the liquid or gas, through which the object is falling. Some fluids flow more easily than other fluids, such as the ease which, with which fluids flow is called the viscosity. Fluids with a low viscosity flow easily. The greater the surface area, the greater the drag. The greater the viscosity, the greater the drag. Okay. A number of forces acting on a body may be replaced by a single force that has the same effect on the body as the original forces acting together. This single force is called resultant force. If the resultant force on the body is zero, we can say that forces are balanced or that the body is in equilibrium. If the resultant force on a body is not zero, we may say that the forces are unbalanced. Forces affect the motion of a body. If the resultant force acting on a stationary body is zero, the body will remain stationary. If the resultant force acting on a stationary body is not zero, the body will accelerate in the direction of resultant force. Alright. So this is all what we have been done about, and at the last we are moving towards the key points to remember. If body A exerts a force on body B, then body B exerts an equal pressure and opposite pressure on body A, or a force on body A. A number of forces acting on a body may be replaced by a single force that has the same effect on the body as all the original forces acting together. This single force is called the resultant force. If there is a resultant force acting on a body, the body will always accelerate. Terminal velocity is the constant speed of a falling object reaches when the drag force is equal to its weight. So the resultant force is zero. Stopping distance is equal is the total distance the vehicle travels between the driver seeing a hazard and the vehicle stopping. The sinking distance is the distance a vehicle travels between the driver seeing a hazard and pressing the brakes. It depends on the driver's reaction time. Braking distance is the distance the vehicle travels by the between the driver pressing the brakes and the vehicle stopping. If a object is moving in a circle, there must be a resultant force acting on it towards the center of the circle. This resultant force is called the centripetal force. The size of the centripetal force depends on the mass of the object, the speed of the object, and the radius of the object. Alright, so here we go. I hope so that you understand this chapter. it is not that much complicated for you, but yeah, a bit tricky. You're required to just having a preparation of it. Prepare it best and go for your CIs, which are very easier for you if you'll be understanding this chapter, because upcoming chapters will must be more complicate yourself. Okay, so basically this is what, and I hope so that you understand. Thank you.